My name is Harvey Miller. I'm the Area Director for DFO in the Maritimes region in southwest New Brunswick. I'm here today with Erica Stuart. Erica works in the area office as well in the Aquatic Ecosystems program. And you'll see behind us here is the Skutik River, also locally known as the St. Croix, and the Milltown Dam as well. This river has an amazing history, and it hasn't been a good one. There's been a lot of dams built on the river and industry, and it's just really caused, there's been pollution, and fish populations are really decimated here and over the years, and it looked pretty hopeless for this river. But we just want to tell you today about a good news story of what can be done when people work together. And I first became involved with this around 2009, and there was already a group of people working to try to make things happen. The state of Maine had passed a law that prevented the passage of alewife, which is a type of Gaspereau, sometimes known as sea run or river herring. And they thought that the thought at the time was that the alewife were eating the smallmouth bass, which were an invasive species in this river, and they were being blamed for it. So the state of Maine had passed a law that prevented their passage, and the stocks went from around 3 million fish to only 900 in 2002, and so we almost lost those fish in this river. And just to quickly say that it was Madonna Soctoma with the Passamaquoddy tribe in Maine that she brought a bill. I remember the name. It was Bill LD 72 to the Maine legislature, and a lot of people got together, and the law was changed so that fish could start to come up the river again. And that was the first thing that had to be done, because there was no point looking at restoring this river and trying to bring it back if fish couldn't pass up it. So that was the start of this whole thing, and people working together. But Erica was saying to me the other day here how complex this has been. She came on in 2018 working with it, and she's just going to tell you a little bit about the complexity of this whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the complexity kind of involves. Like there's various levels of jurisdiction and a lot of different interest groups that use the river. And so what I mean by jurisdiction is that each of the different fishways, some are on the Canadian side and others are on the US side. And so the ones on the Canadian side are under the regulatory authority of the Fisheries Act. So DFO would regulate those fishways. But other fishways on the river are on the U.S. side, and so they're federally regulated by the U.S. side. And then there are a couple of dams as well that were put in place at Woodland and Grand Falls that were put in before those federal regulatory acts were put in the FERC regulations. And so it's a bit unclear who has the regulatory authority over those fishways. And it was at one of those particular fishways that the blockages were put in place. So it made it really complex of who should be involved in trying to fix this problem. Another complexity is that obviously it's an international river, so it spans between the state of Maine and the province of New Brunswick. So there's the states involved, the provinces involved, and also some other international partners like the Global Affairs Canada and the International Joint Commission. And finally, so some of the user group or the interest, there's some conflicting interests of the user groups on the river as well. As Harvey had said about the bass guides and the recreational bass fishery really brought a lot of money to the state of Maine, and so politically it was important to maintain that recreational fisheries as well. And like Harvey said, there was a lot of hesitation to allow fish passage in the event of it possibly hurting that industry.
So the complexity, and all the groups, like there's the St. Croix International Waterway Commission and the International Watershed Board, and I still get confused today, but they all work with us, and plus a lot of other groups. But I should just say why was it so important to look at restoring this river? And I mentioned the Passamaquoddy tribe and what they did, kind of getting things rolling. There have been a lot of groups working hard to make change. Our international office in Ottawa, with DFO and Global Affairs Canada and others, and probably for at least 20 years we tried and nothing was happening, and people were going to settle for less. They were trying to work on an adaptive management plan, which was only going to allow 6 fish per acre in this river, which is just about nothing. And so when the Passamaquoddy got involved, and the work that Madonna did and many others, Paul Basalka working for them and others, that's when we really caught on to the cultural benefit this was for the Indigenous people. And Chief Akagi has said that, without a river, we don't have a nation, we don't have a people. It's our culture, it's the heart of this whole place. And so that was a real motivator to get people really going and on all sides and all fronts. But the value that a river brings to the fresh water, to the whole ecosystem, everything relies on a river. And if it's a healthy river, there's from eagles to river otters to the fish and everything. But not only that, the marine environment. They've been called the fish that feeds all. And from whales to cormorants to whatever, they're a basic food chain species. So that was why it was just really important to do this.
Key group called the Skutik River Keepers, and they were made up of some pretty key leaders from the Passamaquoddy Nation, and like Harvey had mentioned, like Ed Bassett and Paul Basalka, and Chief Akagi was part of that.
Yeah, Brian Altvader, true leaders in the beginning and still there. And
how they led the process is they really reached out to all of the federal partners and all of the regulatory agencies, and really wanted to keep everybody in communication, regular communication. And so they established a St. Croix River Next Steps working group, which had monthly meetings. It still continues today. And monthly on the phone, and then we would also have some fairly regular in-person meetings. And the purpose of this working group is essentially for all of the partners involved just to sit down and talk about, this is what I can do to help restore the river, this is what my department or my agency can do to help restore the river. And throughout the whole, almost in every meeting, there's always the sentiment that the cultural importance of this restoration for the Passamaquoddy and the Beskiddamagati, that was sort of an underlying discussion that we always had at all of these meetings. And
tell us about the partnership meetings. I know there had been one partnership meeting, a small one, before you started, but there was one that had a huge impact, not just on you, but on everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started for DFO in 2018, and within the first couple of weeks that I had started, Harvey invited me to attend the St. Croix Next Steps working group meeting in person in St. Andrews. And I was new and I didn't know anyone, but he said it would be a great learning experience, so I went. And it was 2 days worth of meetings, and all of the different partners were given the opportunity to talk or present on just different aspects of restoration. And I can remember one particular presentation that was done by Ed Bassett. And previous to that meeting, Ed had unfortunately had some tragic events, family events occur, and so we all had that in mind at this meeting. And his part of the presentation was he kept it really short, and he had a piece of paper, a small piece of paper, and he handed it out to everyone in the group, each their own piece of paper, And he held his and he read the words off of it. And on the piece of paper it said, tribal rights, treaties, and sustenance. And he took the piece of paper and he put it in his mouth and he started to eat it. And then he spit the paper back out and said, what good are these words? Do these words feed my family? No. Do they feed my community? No. These words mean nothing to me. And it was in that moment, I think all of us had this feeling of, you know, we need to act. We can't just keep talking about this. We really need to become leaders ourselves and try to make a difference for this community. So I wanted to say Harvey was kind of one of those leaders that really kept this issue in the forefront of everyone's mind. And there were others as well, if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's an amazing story that you just said about that meeting. That was amazing. Yeah, there were people at that meeting that they came to me afterwards and they said, we're giving resources to this, we're dedicating people to work on this, and it certainly had the impact. But yeah, there was internally within DFO, it was like, I guess I could say, there's a saying, if you want to be a leader, find a parade and get in front of it. Well, we found a parade, but we didn't. We just joined it. We just joined it, and there we just kept talking about it. We at meetings everywhere we went, and these people internally, we were talking about the St. Croix and what could be done, and it helped light the fire and the passion. And I think about Paulette Hall with the fish habitat protection program from the Gulf region, the regulatory role that she had, and she found, you know, her role. There was things that needed to be done that way, and there was just so many people that in our policy and group and everywhere, and that's what was happening as well with all the other groups and agencies in the U.S. as well. But you know, at first when we talked about what could happen in this river, and Jamie Gibson from Scientist, he started talking about not just the alewife, but you know, all the sea-run species that could come back here, 10 plus species that were no longer in the river. And but when Jamie started to talk about 40 to 50 million alewife, people just went, what? Well, that was unheard of. But we said, why not? Why not? You know, why would we stop at 3 million? So that's just how it took off. Yeah. Yeah.
And once we started talking about these big numbers, you know, we really came to the realization we need to make some pretty big changes to fish passage on the river as well to allow for these numbers to get upstream. And so that was really when the Beskin-Magadi Nation, Chief Akagi, and MB Power and DFO Gulf FFHPP started working together really closely to come up with a plan to remove the Milltown Dam, as you can see in the background. So the Milltown Dam is scheduled to be decommissioned starting this year, and the plan is to restore the river it was called Salmon Falls, so return to the natural state of the Salmon Falls.
So this is this story, there's so much that could happen, it's amazing, but I guess some of the really key takeaways from this is a whole lot of people dedicated their time voluntarily, like they just did it. You know, there's probably never a better example that I know of partnerships and collaboration. And this all happened, when you think about it, this is an indigenous nation, another country, the United States of America, you know, federal agencies, several of them, and Canada with, you know, Environment, Climate Change Canada, Global Affairs, DFO, you know, all these coming together and working without a terms of reference or anything, informally, and making things happen. I think it just really shows what can be done if people get together and work together and have a common goal and purpose. And I think this St. Croix restoration is just a perfect example. Erica's been working on a statement of cooperation, and I think that's kind of a next step in we've only just begun. So the statement of cooperation, Erica, what's that?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
actually there was a statement of cooperation developed back in 2013 between a smaller group of the partners, so the 2 U.S. tribes, Passamaquoddy tribes, and 4 of the federal departments. But now, this spring, we're planning to sign a new amended statement of cooperation, which involves many new partners that have become involved over the years in the restoration of the river. And so that includes Canada, so DFO, and the Vesco-Magadi Nation at Skutik, and also a couple of new key partners that have come on board. The state of Maine, the Maine Department of Marine Resources, and another federal department in the state that's called Natural Resources Conservation Services. And those 2 groups have been really key in sourcing out some pretty large sums of funding for improvements upriver. So once the dam is removed, then there's lots of plans in place to keep going upriver and make improvements all along the way.
Yeah, I think it was Paul Veselka who said, there's enough momentum now, it's like a snowball. He says, I can just step back, others, because this is just going to keep going, and the future is really great for it. So yeah, so it's a great story. Glad we were able to share it today. Yeah, thank you.